live. We are live, and welcome to another edition of Sports Crunch with DKROM. I'm your host, David Cromwell, more commonly known as DKROM, but all I can say is we are 5 days away from the 2016 NFL Draft, and I cannot wait for all the smoke screens and lying to end. I just want to know the truth once and for all, but the best we can do for you today, as the lying will probably continue for another 5 more days to a certain degree, we have another very special guest on the program this morning. Bleacher Report, I'm just in love with their draft coverage. And earlier this year, we had Justice Mosqueda. A couple weeks ago, we had Luke Easterling. And today, we invite the film doctor himself. He just evaluates film and writes articles explaining the film better than anybody I can imagine. Hence his Twitter handle name at NFL Film Study. Bleacher Report's very own Ian Wharton. Welcome to the show, Ian. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be on, man. It's best time of the year for me, and I think most fans agree that this is just too much drama. You just can't say no. It's like a testosterone-filled soap opera. So it's a great time of year.
It sure is. It's easily my favorite day of the year of the non-playing football season. I love the games, but the draft process is what makes the NFL a 365-day-a-year entity, and when we're very close to that, and so what we're going to do this morning, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to do a mock draft, but this is not going to be a traditional mock draft in which I write it up and you just read it. Remember, mock drafts are only exercises in the hypotheticals, as I like to say. So what we're going to do is I am going to play the role of scout, coach, personnel director, or whoever below the GM in a war room that's trying to make a case to whoever the GM is, which will be played by Ian, as to why a certain team should make a certain pick. And Ian is going to tell me whether he would accept the pick or if he disagrees with the pick and who he'd pick in their place. So this is a simulated version of a simulated mock draft to give you an idea of what goes on in those war rooms on draft and what could very well be going on in those war rooms this very minute as we speak, because the draft boards are all set and teams are debating what to do, where they line up in that first round. And let's get it started. And all right, you're Les Snead, the Los Angeles Rams general manager, and me being whoever below him saying, Les, we just gave up a fortune to trade up to the top one pick, one of the biggest fortunes ever paid for in NFL draft history. And we didn't do this to not draft a quarterback here. And looking at 2 or 3 options here, it's enticing. But the one with the most impressive resume and the most experience that makes him the best suited out of all the 3 to start on day one is Jared Goff from California. So I beg you that the Los Angeles Rams, with their first pick in the 2016 NFL draft, Jared Goff, quarterback from California. Your take?
I agree. I think this is a no-brainer decision. To me, he's the guy that he's not only got the pedigree in terms of where he's come from, elevating that California football program. He did not have an easy time there. Now, he had some good weapons around him. I don't think that that's a narrative that is correct. I've seen some people pass on. He's had some good receivers, good running backs there. But overall, that defense gave up over 30 points a game, and that was a very difficult thing to deal with. And they built that from a 1-11 team to an 8-5 team with the help of Goff, and among others. And so I think he's a no-brainer pick here. To me, he's easily the top quarterback in this class. Just the things that he does in the pocket are not natural. You compare his pocket presence to everyone else in the class, and it's not even close. You don't see guys move in the pocket like that and deliver an accurate football too often. I think he's definitely the best pick here.
As many would agree. And now moving on to pick 2 that was just traded up to the Philadelphia Eagles. And Howie Roseman, whoever I am below you, I say this. Just like the Rams, we paid a fortune. We mortgaged our future just to get here. We didn't do it to not take a quarterback here. And we're down to 2 options now in Carson Wentz and Paxton Lynch. Yes, Paxton Lynch has talent, but he is a year away. And we want a guy who is better suited to picking up our scheme. And Carson Wentz most people don't know, he played in a pro-style scheme at North Dakota State, under center, making full field reads, and his football intelligence off the charts. We might have to sit him for a half a year to a year behind who we have now, Sam Bradford or Chase Daniel, whoever wins that competition. But I think he has the most upside of all the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft. So I propose that the Eagles, with the second pick, take Carson Wentz, quarterback, North Dakota State. And I know you disagree here. Go ahead.
I'm not a big Carson Wentz fan. He is a good fit in Philadelphia's system, in fairness. What they're going to run with Doug Peterson, West Coast system, that's what Wentz can do. He's a big guy with a strong arm, but he is a mess mechanically. He's got a lot of work to do in terms of refining his process, delivering more accurate passes on a consistent basis. I really worry about him. I think he's more of a mid-round talent that's been pushed up before the season. We've even seen it from people around the league say that he was a second-day pick before the year. Well, he missed half the season to an injury, and he wasn't that impressive in the games that he did play. So I worry that he's getting pushed up in this process because of that football intelligence and character reasons. And those are 2 important things, but those don't make the prospect. I think he's a very big project. To be honest, I wouldn't take him in the first round, period. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Paxton Lynch here, who I'm a little bit higher on. I think he is, like you said, a guy that needs to sit year 1, and that's a good situation with Philadelphia. Just a head-scratching decision overall here to move up to number 2 overall, but we have to deal with what has happened already. And for me, I would go Paxton Lynch here.
Interesting take, and you're not the only one I have spoken to about this in recent days. And another thing, folks, this isn't a quarterback-driven league. It's a quarterback-desperate league, folks, and that is why you saw the Rams and the Eagles do what they did. And with the quality of quarterback play at its lowest rate ever, dare I say, in the National Football League to a certain degree, and it's only about to get worse, at least my fears. So that's why you saw what the Rams and Eagles did. And now with the 3rd pick, San Diego Chargers. All right, Tom Telesco. I know we need help on the defensive line, and we could replace Eric Well in safety, but this defensive line class is so freaking deep. The deepest in arguably 20 years. And we could always draft a safety later on. I pretty like the safety depth too. So, but Phillip Rivers last year barely had time to complete a 5-yard out route. It was embarrassing to watch. So I think the San Diego Chargers with the 3rd pick should draft Laramie Tunsil, tackle from Mississippi. Your call.
Definitely makes sense. I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball. Reason being is this is a team we've already put a lot of assets into that offensive line. We signed Orlando Franklin. King Dunlap got an extension in 2014. Joe Barksdale got a 5-year extension this offseason. It's going to be difficult for us to justify taking another offensive lineman. We do need depth and help there, maybe day 2, day 3. But I'm not sure 3rd overall pick. I'm not sure where he's going to start and what you do with the players that you've already paid. And, as much as I like Tunsil, I do think he's the best player in this draft. I just don't see where he's going to slide in immediately. So I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball. I think that this defense has a lot of issues. I'm going to go with the best defensive player on my board, which would be free safety Jalen Ramsey, who immediately can play with Dwight Lowery in that secondary, Jason Verrett, Casey Hayward, Brandon Flowers, and just have one of the most talented secondaries in the NFL.
Oh, that definitely sounds enticing. And I would argue Jalen Ramsey would be an upgrade over what Eric Weddle was last year. Ramsey brings Tyrann Mathieu type versatility to that defense. So that defensive coordinator, John Pagano, is going to get super creative with Ramsey if the Chargers tend to go that direction, which I still see happening as well. All right, Dallas Cowboys. All right, Jerry Jones. I understand Tony Romo is not getting any younger or healthier, but what made our team? What made the difference in our team in 2014? The running back position. DeMarco Murray carried the team on our shoulders and made Tony Romo's life easier. And our strength was the offensive line, and we had a running back to utilize it. Last year, we were proven wrong. It does take a running back, no matter how great the offensive line is, to make plays. And that's why, since we are running out in our championship window of championship competitiveness, we have to play to win now. And that's why I propose that the Cowboys draft Ezekiel Elliott, running back from Ohio State, at 4 overall. Your call.
I like this pick a lot. I'm not going to go this direction. I'm actually going to go with the other Ohio State prospect here that I think. But as I say that, I want to just make sure that I clarify and say Ezekiel Elliott would be a fantastic pick. My only concern with taking him is that you've got another premier talent on the board here in Joey Bosa, the defensive end. I think that both are huge needs, and for me, I'm going to skew towards the positional importance that a defensive end is. I don't think it's going to be often that this team can add that type of player. We don't expect them to be in the top 5 to 10 that often. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Joey Bosa, who can be the best defensive end on our roster right away. Suspensions aside, although Randy Gregory and DeMarcus Lawrence do have those suspensions, whether they were suspended or not, this would be my pick. I will not fight against an Ezekiel Elliott pick. I think it's a great pick, but I'm going to lean towards Bosa here.
Yes, and they might have, and that's going to be a very tough decision since Randy Gregory and DeMarcus Lawrence have been suspended for the first 4 games of the season. So the Cowboys, they need a pass rush, but it's going to be a tough decision here, though. And number 5, Dave Caldwell. I have the Jaguars taking Jalen Ramsey here, number 5, but since you already took him off the board, yes, there has been some chatter about Miles Jack's knee. And some teams are saying, oh, we're very worried, and others are saying, no, we're not worried. But I have a feeling that those teams that say they are worried are just trying to suppress his value by trying to get him out of the top 10. The Jaguars, we're building a pretty solid front four with Malik Jackson and obviously Dante Fowler Jr. and Cedric Marks. But now we got to add speed to our back end on defense. Paul Posluszny is old, and we need speed at linebacker, and that's why I propose that with the 5th pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Miles Jack, linebacker from UCLA. Dave Caldwell?
You know, I think this is a tough spot because the way the board has fallen for the Jaguars is not ideal. To me, this is a pick now between 2 players, either Miles Jack, like you mentioned, or Shaq Lawson out of Clemson. It might be a little high for Lawson, but this team needs another defensive end. I wasn't a huge fan of Dante Fowler last year. I think Lawson's a better player. He's a different player, too. He's more of a speed rusher, a little bit better against the run as well. But it's difficult to take Lawson this high. Again, it's not ideal that you would take him in the top 5. So I'm going to go with you here. I think Miles Jack, I'm not the biggest Miles Jack fan. I think he's a first-round talent, but I think a lot of what he does is more projection over actual impact on the game. That being said, in this defense, considering the holes that they have, considering the need for athleticism, like you mentioned, he makes a lot of sense here. So I'm going to go with Miles Jack as well.
Miles Jack it is, and as many mocks have said, but Miles Jack could still take a tumble out of the top 10. My mind is obviously open to that. And now the Baltimore Ravens. Ozzie Newsome, you should be applauding right now because Terrell Suggs is 34 years old. Elvis Dumervil is 32 years old. You need anybody that can attack the quarterback in a division with quarterbacks like Ben Roethlisberger or even Andy Dalton. And Joey Bosa is already off the board, but DeForest Buckner, I think, would thrive in the Ravens 3-4 system. He would create that pressure up the middle or off the edge and stuff the run just as well. So I propose that the Ravens, with the 6th pick, take DeForest Buckner, defensive end from Oregon.
I like that pick a lot. So actually what it was revealed on, and we haven't really seen this come out too much, but on the MMQB podcast with Andy Benoit, he said they were going to be switching to a 4-3 defense. So if that is indeed happening, which again I've only seen from that one source, they need a defensive end badly. And so Buckner makes sense there. I think Joey Bosa would be ideal. But I'm actually going to go a little bit of a different direction here. I'm going to take Laramie Tunsil off the board, who has fallen to this spot unexpectedly. He's the best tackle prospect I've evaluated in the last 4 years. I think he is a very safe player to take. And I don't mean that in the negative terms where people say, well, there's no safe prospects. Well, he's safe because he's so good. It's not that he's going to be an average player. He's going to be a very good left tackle. He's going to allow Baltimore to move on from Eugene Monroe and immediately save $5 million on the cap. We're going to come back in the 2nd, 3rd round, address that defensive linebacker position ideally after we take Tunsil here.
Yes, the Eugene Monroe's constant injury problems, that is a very powerful case for Tunsil to go to Baltimore if he's available there. And that would be a quintessential Ozzie Newsome pick with BPA right there. So And moving on to 7, the San Francisco 49ers. Oh, my God. The Niners stink. They stink. And I don't know what to do with the board falls, but we just with the quarterback that I would want for Chip Kelly and Paxton Lynch gone. I don't think Carson Wentz fits Chip Kelly's offense at all. I wouldn't take Carson Wentz here. I would. I had Joey Bosa here in my originally, but he's already off the board. But we need defensive help. And you say you're a pretty big fan of Shaq Lawson. The Niners just need anybody who can stop the run off the edge and create some pressure as well. So I say the San Francisco 49ers at number 7 take Shaq Lawson, defensive end from Clemson.
I'll actually go with the person that you picked for the last pick. I like DeForest Buckner here, not just because of the Oregon fit.
Damn, that's right. That's right.
I just think when you look at value on the board here, I'm not sure about Shaq Lawson in a 3-4 defense. I am sure what DeForest Buckner can do in a 3-4 defense. He can play 5 technique. He can swing inside and nickel packages, play a 3 technique and a 4-3 if you want to do multi-front. To me, it's just an easy pick because you know what he can do with Eric Armstead on the other side, and obviously Chip Kelly knows what type of person DeForest Buckner is, which reportedly he's a very hard worker, very good young man. So I'm very comfortable taking Buckner here.
Yeah, I should have. I forgive me for being stupid enough to think that Buckner was already off the board when in fact he was still on the board in this spot. And now we have a trade. The Tennessee Titans have traded up to pick 8 with the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns, during their analytics game, gather more assets while the Tennessee Titans use that ammo they got from the Rams to move up. And at number 8, the Tennessee Titans select to protect the blind side of Marcus Mariota, Ronnie Stanley, offensive tackle from Notre Dame. John Robinson, your thoughts?
I think this is the perfect pick. I actually like this move up. It's not going to cost too much to move up from 15 to 8. You've got those extra second-round picks, and I think this is a decent chance to use them. Stanley's a really good pass protector. He is a perfect fit at left tackle for this team. I can't argue this one at all. I think this is the right move.
Yes, got to protect Mariota after Titans quarterbacks were sacked more than 50 times last year, and I would be shocked if Tennessee did not at least try to move up around to this spot. And now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, Jason Light, you invested a lot in our offense. We got our quarterback in the future. We got a stud wide receiver. We got Doug Martin's finally become the player we thought he was. And but now it's time to rebuild our defense. And Joe McCoy's a lonely man on that defensive front. He's our only pure pass rusher, and we need somebody on the edge to distract attention away from him. And this guy, it might be a risky proposition here, but Leonard Floyd, a lot of people are super high because of his athletic measurables, and I think he's worth taking a chance on because this is a crapshoot at edge rusher. So with the 9th pick, I propose the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Leonard Floyd, edge pass rusher from Georgia. Jason Light, your thoughts?
You know, I'm not a huge Leonard Floyd person. I know he's going to go high in the draft. I think this is the right range for where he'll go. I don't see him falling past that 11 spot. And so I think you've got the right range here, although I'm not a big fan of the talent here. So I'm actually going to go with Shaq Lawson. I think he's a natural fit into this defensive front. This team needs just one more pass rusher, and I think Lawson can be that individual. He needs a little bit of time to continue improving, but all rookies will. He's a guy with a high upside and a terrific athlete. So I think we're going to slide into a defensive end here with Shaq Lawson.
Yes, and Shaq Lawson was compared by Dane Brugler to Pernell McPhee, and Pernell McPhee has obviously grown into one of the more underrated pass rushers in the NFL, and a guy with that kind of upside next to Gerald McCoy would be too enticing for Tampa to pass over, at least in my opinion. All right, New York Giants, Jerry Reese. You invested $200 million in rebuilding our defense in free agency, but looking at our offense, we don't have anybody in our receiving corps to complement Odell Beckham. Ruben Randle is gone. Victor Cruz, it is unfair to expect him to be the player he once was. We need somebody to take the double teams away from Odell Beckham Jr., and that's why I say with the 10th pick, the New York Giants select wide receiver from Mississippi, Laquan Treadwell.
It's a great pick. Yeah, this is a great pick, but unfortunately I'm going to have to overrule this one as well. Reason being is who's going to protect Eli Manning? Right now, Marshall Newhouse is projected to play right tackle. That simply cannot happen this season. We've been devastated by injuries the last few years across that offensive line. and it caused us to move on from William Beatty and Jeff Schwartz this offseason, which were two very good players when they played. However, injury concerns have led us to release them. Now I'd actually like to either move Eric Flowers back to the right side, or we can actually just draft the right tackle. I think we're going to go here with Ohio State offensive tackle Taylor Decker, who can play either side, and he and Flowers can duke it out in training camp. But we have got to shore up this offensive line first. It's a deep wide receiver class as well, so I feel pretty confident in round 2 we could come back and add a solid wide receiver.
Very good point. And even though it was my idea for the Giants to pick Treadwell, I always tell people that I would prefer an elite offensive line and functional wide receivers to elite wide receivers and a crappy offensive line every day of the week. Just ask Andrew Luck that question. Moving on, the Chicago Bears. All right, Ryan Pace. Like I said with Ozzie Newsome, the Bears need anybody from anywhere to get after the quarterback. Pernell McPhee can't do this by himself. And it's amazing. Sheldon Reagan's on the board. Some people might have questions about whether he is long enough to play a base end in a 3-4, but the NFL is a league of sub packages now. Running that 4-3 sub package, we can just put him inside a 3 technique and he can just penetrate and attack that passer up the gut. And that is the kind of pressure that makes that's the way we need to pressure a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who makes his living in the pocket most of the time. And so I say with the 11th pick, the Chicago Bears select Sheldon Rankins, defensive tackle from Louisville. Accept or reject, Ryan Pace?
I'm going to reject, but with a conditional statement that I like that a lot. It's a really good pick. If my guy was off the board here, I think Rankins would be my guy. I'm going to go with Noah Spence, though, the outside linebacker from Eastern Kentucky. For some reason, this is a guy who's kind of fallen off as the draft process has continued, which I'm not really sure why. If you look at his on-field production and his abilities, there's no doubt about it to me. He's the best outside linebacker prospect in this class. He can immediately come in and spell that weak side linebacker position opposite of Pernell McPhee in that 3-4 front. I think that he is a heck of a football player, and he tested as a decent athlete, which is all I needed to see to say you mixed a decent athlete with great film, and I feel very comfortable with him here. But I do like that Rankins pick, although I'm going to shy away from it at this time.
Yeah, interesting with Noah Spence, though, because to me, John Fox isn't a guy who would like to take guys with such character concerns, albeit Noah Spence did do a great job in trying to clean that up at the combine from what I've heard from the reporters that I trust in this process. But moving along to the New Orleans Saints. All right, Nicky Loomis, our defense has been the worst defense in football for the last 2 years, and there's very little debate to that, I'd argue. We need help on defense, and it all starts up front. And all right, and since the Bears passed on Sheldon Reagan, I say that the New Orleans Saints, who might be transitioning to a 4-3 with Dennis Allen now the defensive coordinator, that we select Sheldon Rankins, defensive tackle from Louisville, to get pressure up the gut on some of the 3 best quarterbacks we have to face this season in our division. Accept or reject, Nicky Loomis?
I'm going to accept this one. I think this is the perfect fit of need, also with skill set. Rankins can play 3 technique as in a 4-3. He can also kick out to end if he needs to. If we are going to move to a 3-4 front and sub packages or even a base defense, he fits there as well. So his versatility really fits nicely. This is a situation where you've just got to get production out of this first-round pick, and Rankins is that guy.
Absolutely, and it wouldn't surprise me to see Rankins go even higher than this, given what he did at the Senior Bowl and the premiums on people at his position nowadays. And I can talk on and on. Moving along to the Miami Dolphins. All right, Mike Tannenbaum, Chris Greer. We let go of Brett Grimes for financial purposes, and plus he was getting a little long in the tooth. We need a shutdown corner, and our new defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph, prefers guys who are long, tall, and fast. And William Jackson III from Houston fits the bill. So with the 13th pick, I propose the Miami Dolphins select William Jackson III, quarterback from Houston. What do you say, Mike Tannenbaum, Chris Greer?
I'm going to accept this because that would be my number 1 target as well. He's a perfect scheme fit. He can complement Byron Maxwell. You can move Jamar Taylor inside the slot corner, which is his preferred position as well. I don't think Miami goes this way in the draft in real life. If Ezekiel Elliott is on the board, I think they go Elliott. But I agree with you. I think Jackson is the right pick.
Oh, especially if Ezekiel Elliott is off the board. I should have realized he was on the board. So, but it's the kind of mock we're doing that it's an unconventional mock. But moving right along here, you accepted that. And for the Oakland Raiders, Ezekiel Elliott would be enticing here. If he's available, I would seriously consider him, but I would try to consider building our defense right now. And we got Sean Smith in free agency, but we need a shutdown corner for the long term. Sean Smith is on the wrong side of 30. And Vernon Hargraves III, he might be a tad bit undersized, but he has he's technically sound, and he's a feisty tackler, kind of like in the mold of somebody named Chris Harris Jr., who Jack Del Rio coached with the Broncos. So I think Vernon Hargraves III would be an excellent fit in the Raiders system. Reggie McKenzie, what do you think?
It's a great reasoning, and I think this is the right range for Vernon Hargraves as well. However, I'm going to reject, and I'm actually going to go with Ezekiel Elliott. I think this is the floor for Elliott. The Raiders had a great offseason. They've had a last couple of offseasons to really build up this team, to build to this moment where you can make a decision and say, do we take the best player available? And I think that Ezekiel Elliott is the best player available. It's a good cornerback class overall. Again, I like Hargraves. I think he's got a place in the league, but I don't think he's going to be a number one corner. I think he's just going to be a number two complementary type corner. I don't need to take him here when there's a talent like Elliott on the board. If Elliott was gone, I do think that would be my selection, though.
I agree. I think they actually do take Elliott there, and I saw you foresaw you doing that to me. Although Hargraves would be a very good pick if Elliott is gone. And then now the Cleveland Browns on the clock at 15. All right, Hugh Jackson, Sashi Brown. We just compiled assets after assets after assets. We are in great shape here, but I think with this pick, I think Vernon Hargraves is my favorite player left on the board. So I think we just go best player available and get Joe Hayden, that running mate at quarter that we thought we were getting with Justin Gilbert, but he's a bust, and we've given. I personally give it up on him. So with the 15th pick, the Cleveland Browns select Vernon Hargraves, cornerback from Florida. Accept or reject, Sashi Brown, Hugh Jackson?
You know, I'm actually going to accept this. It's not really an immediate need. Tramon Williams was a good player last year. Joe Hayden had a very down year. And they also have Pierre Desir. So, I mean, this is a little bit of an odd position for them, where if they trade down this far, I think they've missed on those impact players. And really 15 is where that talent drop-off happens. But I do agree it's an asset collection league, and I think that this is a move where you can maybe even just move on from Tramon Williams after this pick. You can just cut him after the draft or trade him at another point in the draft, despite him playing so well. You're not going to be winning in this season, so there's no reason to be paying an older player like that. So I'm going to go ahead and accept this one.
All right, moving right along here. And with the 16th pick of the Detroit Lions, Bob Quinn. We are quietly building a great offensive line here. We have two excellent bookend guards in Laken Tomlinson and Larry Warford, and now it's time to solve our tackle position. Riley Reif is not a left tackle. We got to move him back to right tackle, and for that long-term solution at left tackle, I don't think we have to search far and just go up the road to East Lansing and select, with the 16th pick, the Detroit Lions with Jack Conklin, offensive tackle from Michigan State. What do you think, Bob Quinn?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge Conklin fan, but at some point this tackle class does take a dip. And you're right with the reasoning. There's no doubt about it. They've got to address that offensive line. Whether you move Conklin to the right side or you move Reif to the right side, either one works. You've got to protect Matt Stafford. I'm going to definitely accept this one.
All right, and tackle is becoming just as much a crapshoot as quarterback these days. So we're going to see teams reach for tackles probably in round one, especially. Would you say so? Oh,
absolutely, absolutely.
Yep, yes, sir. And now with the Atlanta Falcons. All right, Scott Pioli, Thomas Dimitroff. We have a, dare I say, we just don't have any playmakers on defense, especially up front. Sans Desmond Trufant, we don't have anybody on defense. And Vic Beasley does have promise, but he's more of a complimentary Bruce Irvin type rusher, in my opinion. We need to get him a running mate. And let's not look farther than we did when we looked at Vic last year. Let's go to Clemson and pick Kevin Dodd, defensive end from Clemson, with the 17th overall pick in the 2016 draft to give us the 1-2 punch and pass rush we so desperately need. What do you say, Thomas Dimitroff or Scott Pioli?
I'm going to go ahead and accept this. The reasoning is perfect. I think that it's either here or Darren Lee, the Ohio State linebacker. I really like Darren Lee as well, but Dodd definitely fits that immediate need. He's going to start right away at defensive end, or at least play in a heavy rotation. So I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, Darren Lee would make perfect sense at 17 too. At 18, the Indianapolis Colts. All right, Ryan Griggs said this is the most important draft of your life. You have to do to Andrew Luck what the Broncos did with Peyton Manning this past year. Get a defense to help him, and also get an offensive line to help him out. Those are the best two ways you can help Andrew Luck out right now, in my opinion. And the best tackles are sadly off the board. I had them picking Decker here, but you already took him at 10 with the Giants. But Darren Lee, you mentioned, the Colts also need playmakers on defense, and you start that defense somewhere up front, up the middle, and Darren Lee is that perfect guy to play inside linebacker in the Colts 3-4 scheme. They can just fly around, make tackles, and make great plays on the ball all day. So with the 18th pick, the Colts select Darren Lee, linebacker from Ohio State. Ryan Grigson, you accept it?
I do. I think this is a great fit, especially after they lost Jarrell Freeman for a really small amount of money. I think that was a huge loss for them. The perfect guy to replace him would be Darren Lee.
Completely agree. And all right, Buffalo Bills, pick 19. Rex Ryan. You're Doug Whaley. And Doug Whaley, we need to rebuild that bully up front. We lost our luster on defense last year. We came in the league being hyped as like the best defensive line in the league, and it took a great fall with Mario Williams and Kyle Williams both getting old. We need to rebuild that bully up front. And this is a roll of the dice, but Rex Ryan just loves to roll the dice no matter how big those red flags are. And Rex Ryan will just knows how to kick somebody's butt to get the absolute maximum out of him. So I say the Buffalo Bills, with the 19th overall pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, select Robert Nkemdiche, defensive tackle from Mississippi. What do you say to that, Doug Whaley?
I love this pick. For me, it'd be either between he and Chris Jones. But I love Nkemdiche. I think he is a top 5 player in this class just in terms of talent. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to him than just what happens on the field. I think this is a great pick, though. It's a high upside pick, which is exactly what you want to do at this point in the first round. You want impact players. He can be an impact player right away, whether it be as a rotational player or whether it be even as a starter. If he can show that he can consistently turn that motor on, which I think he will be able to, I think this is the right pick.
I completely agree, Sue. So that's several picks we've been in agreement on. And now moving on to the New York Jets at 20. I had Noah Spence here at 20, but you had him with the Bears at 11. But the New York Jets, all right, Mike McCagnon, we have a great defensive front three, and we might trade Mo Wilkerson away, but that's how great our defensive front three is. With Sheldon Richardson or Leonard Williams, we won't miss a beat. But we need a guy to create pressure off the edge to help that defensive front three out. And right now, the best edge pass rusher on the board, or with at least potential-wise, is Leonard Floyd. So I say with the 20th pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Leonard Floyd, edge pass rusher from Georgia. Mike McCagnon.
I like that fit. I like the pick as far as your reasoning there. I'm going to overrule on this, though. I actually think this is the point in the draft where you take Connor Cook, the quarterback out of Michigan State. Reason being is, at a worst-case scenario, Connor Cook is going to be no worse than Ryan Fitzpatrick. I was really hoping for Paxton Lynch to fall this far, but for me, one of my top 3 quarterbacks is Connor Cook. It is a reach overall for value, but I think he's a guy he can play right now, and you can pretty much know what you're expecting from him. And I think that's a little bit of a safe pick in terms of, again, he's going to translate to the NFL, I think, very well. And he has a lot of things to work on, but as good as that defensive need is, and they have some massive needs on that defensive side of the ball, I think that you can't pass on a quarterback here if you're the Jets, unless if you feel very good about where you stand with Ryan Fitzpatrick. If you can bring back Fitzpatrick, then I agree with you. But seeing as the current state of the roster does not have Fitzpatrick, I'm going to go with Connor Cook.
Yes, and even if they do re-sign Fitzpatrick, which I definitely see happening, he's 34 years old, and he's not that good anyways. He's not a long-term solution. So the Jets could be one of those teams that panic here and reach on a quarterback like Connor Cook. All right, and now moving right along, Scott McCloughan in Washington. You just landed the biggest fish in the free agency market that unexpectedly came available in Josh Norman at corner, but now you have a massive void in the middle of that defense at nose tackle with the departure of Terrence Knighton to New England, and the nose tackle is the fulcrum of that 3-4 defense. You can't afford to be soft up front, and that is why I say with the 21st pick, Washington selects Andrew Billings, nose tackle from Baylor. Scott McCloughan, do you accept or reject that?
I'm going to reject it just because I'm not sure that Billings is the type of player you want handling double teams on a consistent basis in that 3-4 nose tackle role. I'll stay on the same position, but a guy that I prefer a little bit. I think he's a little bit better of a run defender. I'm going to go with Jerron Reed from Alabama. He has experience at nose tackle and defensive end. A little bit more stout in the body, is a little bit more mature, a little bit older than Billings. Billings is a little bit limited of an athlete overall, and you could see him in space. He does not do very well in the backfield when a running back changes directions on him. Reed is a much better player in terms of those one-on-one situations, and he can also handle double teams a little bit better. Billings may be a better fit for down the line, maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, but I think Reed immediately comes in and earns that starting spot.
Yes, and a lot of people say that Jared Reed also has some untapped potential as a pocket pusher, pass rusher. You buy that?
I would say so. I don't know if he'll ever be a plus pocket passer, but I think he can be adequate, and that's all you really need, especially for this unit, which is so lacking in that department.
Yes, like I said, all you need for a nose tackle is somebody to collapse the pocket up the middle and free those guys up. Reed can at least, if he at least does that, he'll be great value here for Washington. And all right, Houston Texans. All right, Rick Smith. Yes, we got Brock Osweiler and Lamar Miller, and people are clamoring for us to pick a running mate for DeAndre Hopkins, but this is a deep wide receiver class. We can find one. Plus, Brock Osweiler and that offense is not going to be the fulcrum of the centerpiece of a Super Bowl. It's going to be our defense, and our defensive line, sans J.J. Watt right now, our front three, needs help. We need help. Vince Wilfork's long in the tooth, and Jared Crick left in free agency for the Broncos, and J.J. Watt needs somebody to take some pressure off of him right now. And I'd say with the 22nd pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select defensive end, defensive tackle from Mississippi State, Chris Jones. What do you say, Rick Smith?
I love this pick. I love this pick. I think for me, Chris Jones is a top 15, maybe even a top 10 talent in this class. I think you're right about the receivers. There's only a couple receivers I really like. And I don't know why you'd have to force this here at number 22. I think they will force it at number 22. But I agree with you. I think there's no impact player like Chris Jones. You really want to make sure that defense is 100% stout, because that offense isn't going to produce a ton of points. So you need to have a very solid unit. And besides J.J. Watt and Vince Wilfork, there's just not much talent behind those guys. So I love this pick.
Yes, sir. And John McClain of the Houston Chronicle hinted a couple weeks ago that he saw the Texans going this direction on the defensive line in round 1. And all right, Minnesota Vikings at 23. Well, all right, we have a world-class defense, but we need to get Teddy Bridgewater another toy to play with, because Stephon Diggs, as great as he was for us last year, he's not an alpha male at wide receiver. We need a logical running mate for him. Cordero Patterson ain't going to be that guy. And Diggs is very fast, but he doesn't have the size. Yep. So with Laquan Treadwell sitting on the board, I think we take a size compliment to Diggs' speed. And the Minnesota Vikings, with the 23rd overall pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, select Laquan Treadwell, wide receiver from Mississippi. What do you say to that, Rick Spielman?
It's hard to argue with that. I'm going to stick with the same position, but I'm going to reject the player. It's not that I don't really like Laquan Treadwell. I do really like Laquan Treadwell, but I think Josh Doctson is a little bit more dynamic. I think he's more of a vertical threat, which is what this team needs. They just don't have anything besides Stephon Diggs, like you mentioned. So I'm going to go with Doctson, but I wouldn't complain if Treadwell's the guy on the board. I would happily take him as leftovers.
Yes, interesting. Dotson was my original pick in this mock, but since Treadwell was still on the board and I have Treadwell ranked ahead of Dotson, I just decided to go with Treadwell here. But with Dotson off the board, we move on to the Cincinnati Bengals at 24. And Marvin Lewis, you saw your receiver core get depleted. Get depleted a little bit in free agency with the departures of Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu. You need another running mate for A.J. Green. And Laquan Treadwell may be enticing here, but your colleague at Bleacher Report, Matt Miller, loves Mike Thomas, wide receiver from Ohio State. And some people even have him as the best receiver in this draft. And there's even top 15 chatter going on about him right now from what I've heard. And Mike Thomas would give you, along with A.J. Green and Tyler Eifert, a red zone opposing defense's red zone nightmares. And Andy Dalton would be smiling at this pick if he got Mike Thomas to go along with A.J. Green and Tyler Eifert. So I say Cincinnati Bengals take Michael Thomas, wide receiver from Ohio State, with the 24th overall pick. What do you say to that, Marvin Lewis?
I think that's a really good option. I'm going to go with Laquan Treadwell here since he did fall. Treadwell has a little bit more experience in the slot, and working these possession routes. Michael Thomas is a great player. I think he's right there with Doxson and Treadwell as the top 3 receivers in the draft. They're really interchangeable to me. I think that's a really good pick if they do go Thomas, but since Treadwell is such a good value, especially if he can regain that 2014 explosiveness, I think he's going to be the pick here.
Oh, yes, you bring up a good point. Treadwell didn't look all the way back to his old self after that gruesome injury in 2014, but as I spoke to Jake Arthur from Pro Football Spot about him several episodes ago, he thinks it's still possible that Treadwell can return to that previous level of dominance that we saw. And do you see that happening?
I mean, I hope so. I don't know if it can happen, but I certainly hope so. And I'm willing to risk that it is, because worst case scenario, if it doesn't happen, he's still an excellent route runner. He still wins with power over that explosiveness. The question is, does he become more than what he is? And if he can, then he becomes the steal of the draft at this point.
Could very well be. Absolutely. And Pittsburgh Steelers at 25. All right, Kevin Colbert. We have the best offense in the NFL, arguably, but on defense, we haven't been like the steel curtain. Heck, especially in the secondary, we've been like the polyester curtain, the silk curtain. It's embarrassing. We are like just improved secondary play away from competing legitimately for a 7th Lombardi trophy here, and we need to address the secondary here, Kevin Colbert. And yes, there's talk about him dropping out of the first round due to his size and his personality, but he has the personality that fits the Steelers. He has swagger. We need that swagger. We need that energy in our secondary. And he'll bring a Josh Norman-like attitude to our secondary, and that's why I'm saying with the 25th pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Mackenzie Alexander, quarterback from Clemson. What do you say to that, Kevin Colbert?
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to accept this pick. I think this is a really good fit. I have no problem with cornerbacks who have attitude. Marcus Peters has attitude. Josh Norman has attitude. Every cornerback needs to have some level of attitude and confidence. This is a player dedicated to the game. He studies receivers on a weekly basis and keeps a notebook of how they win, how they lose. I think he's got the right personality. There are some concerns with him. He's not overly long. He's not overly quick. And I think those are things that you definitely want to improve with technique work. And it's a young secondary in general. William Gay is the most veteran player left here. But if you can add a guy like Mackenzie Alexander to Ross Cockrell, Senquez Golson, Duran Grant, you can actually hopefully find maybe 2 of those individuals who can be your long-term starter. So I'm definitely going to sign off on this one because it fits the perfect need, and it's a really good player who's fallen to you.
Yes, he could prove to be great value at this stage of a very, very deep draft, may I add. And now the Seattle Seahawks at 26. John Schneider, pay attention. It was a mistake trading Max Unger for Jimmy Graham. Russell Wilson was beaten to a pulp last year. He's our franchise quarterback, and you gave away Max Unger, who was our best offensive lineman during our Super Bowl, our years as Super Bowl runs, for Jimmy Graham, a guy who doesn't fit the mold of what it means to be a Seahawk. You need to correct that mistake right here at 26. And with a mobile quarterback like Russell Wilson, I would argue it's just as important to protect him up the middle as it is on the edges. Our line has only got worse with the departures of Russell Okung and J.R. Sweezy, but we start the rebuild right here, right now, by selecting Ryan Kelly, center from Alabama, right here, John Schneider. What do you say?
It's a really good option. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to reject it, but I like the reasoning. I think he's probably the best lineman on the board, but positional value and considering the depth of the center class and considering the depth of the tackle class, I think we need to grab our tackle here. I'm going to go with Jermaine Ifedi, the tackle from Texas A&M. Ifedi, they're going to move Gary Gilliam over from right tackle to left tackle. They've already stated this. Ifedi's an experienced right tackle, phenomenal athlete. Yes, he needs help with his technique. However, if you have this much trust in Tom Cable, and clearly they do in their offensive line coach, I think Ifedi is the highest upside play. Although I will admit, Kelly is very, very intriguing here.
Yes, absolutely. I would be shocked if Seattle did go offensive line right here, because that, in my opinion, is the weakest spot on an otherwise strong team. And the Green Bay Packers at 27. I had Jared Reed initially in this mock, but he's already off the board to Washington at 21. But the Packers still need a nose tackle. B.J. Raji, whether he's retired or semi-retired, that's left a gaping hole in the middle of our defense, and we need to get more stout up the middle to allow Clay Matthews to go back to the outside linebacker. And it starts with a good nose tackle. And with Andrew Billings still on the board, I say, Ted Thompson, that the Packers, with the 27th pick, select Andrew Billings, nose tackle from Baylor. What do you say to that, Ted Thompson?
I think this is the right spot for Billings as well. Like I said, I do have some concerns with him being nose tackle primarily, but he can play either 5 technique or nose tackle, especially on passing plays. I think he's be a better nose tackle than on running plays. So you need to add probably 2 bodies to that defensive line, maybe even a third one in this draft. So let's start the rebuild early on that unit. Let's go ahead and add Billings.
Yeah, Packers fans would definitely be happy about that pick. And the Kansas City Chiefs at 28, John Dorsey. Last year we selected Marcus Peters, who was Defensive Rookie of the Year. But we lost Sean Smith in free agency. Let's use this as an opportunity to get a bookend compliment to Marcus Peters, because he can't do it with himself. And I'm not sure Philip Gaines nor Steven Nelson are the answer to start opposite him. So I say with the 28th pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select Eli Apple, defensive quarterback from Ohio State. What do you say to that, John Dorsey?
I like the reasoning. I have a little bit more faith in those young cornerbacks. I really like Steven Nelson coming out. I really also like Philip Gaines. Now, obviously, if we had the injury information that we need to make this decision, that may change it, and I would agree with that pick. However, I'm going to reject it and just kind of assume that Gaines is going to be able to come back healthy. If he is going to come back healthy, we need help along that offensive line. We don't have any capable guards right now on this roster. I think that Cody Whitehair, the tackle/guard from Kansas State, would immediately come in and fit our zone blocking scheme perfectly.
Yes, a lot of talk about Cody Whitehair at this stage of the first round, and a lot of Zach Martin comparisons have been floated around about him. Maybe he might not be as good as Zach Martin, but he could be as close as you could get. So that's great value for the Kansas City Chiefs right there. And Arizona Cardinals picking at number 29. As was exposed in the NFC Championship game, Mr. Steve Kine, this is a 3-quarterback league. It's not a 2-quarterback league. It's a 3-quarterback league. And our depth outside of Patrick Peterson and Tyrann Mathieu stinks. It absolutely stinks. We need to invest in another corner here. And yes, I mentioned Eli Apple earlier, but I'm also a big fan of Artie Burns from Miami, because Artie Burns has been rising up draft boards for years. He has amazing ball skills, and he has his personal story of dealing with adversity is something that Bruce Arians treasures in players, their ability to battle through adversity off the field as well as on the field. He is an Arizona Cardinals type player, mentally as well as physically. And that's why I say with the 29th pick, the Arizona Cardinals select Artie Burns, quarterback from Miami. What do you say to that, Steve Kine?
I think your reasoning's perfect here. I'm going to reject the player, but I'm going to stick with the same position. My 3rd best cornerback in this draft is Notre Dame cornerback Kyrie Russell. Russell's a guy that he was a little bit under the radar. He was suspended for the 2014 season due to academic reasons, and he struggled to get back into the fold in 2015 for the first half of the year. However, midway through the year, this looked like a long, athletic player that he showed in 2013. He was my number 2 corner entering the season, and he kind of proved why towards the end of the season, and also at his pro day. Recovered from a broken fibula to post wonderful athletic numbers. I think he's a guy that has a higher upside than anyone else left on the board. Although I am intrigued with Burns and Apple, and I'd actually, when we'll get into this with the next pick, I don't think that those guys will fall too far.
Yes, sir. And the Carolina Panthers all of a sudden in need of a corner here because of the Josh Norman episode. But I suggest a different route here, Dave Gettleman. Dave Gettleman. Look at one of the best defenses of all time, the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had the complete brick wall up the gut with Warren Sapp playing 3 technique, with Derek Brooks in the middle, and with John Lynch at safety. The Panthers are building something similar with K'Wan Short at the 3 tech and Star Lotulelei playing the 4-3 nose, Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis and Shaq Thompson at linebacker. And now we can complete that brick wall with Carl Joseph, free safety from West Virginia. What do you say to that, Dave Gettleman?
I'm going to reject it, but I do like that pick. I think that he is a very good player if he's healthy. I do think that we have a couple more pressing needs, though, that we're going to have to address. One could be cornerback. I really don't like this defensive back talent now. Ben Wickery is a decent player. Brandon Boykin's a great slot player. However, I do think that most of the cornerbacks at this point in the draft, I know Eli Apple's on the board. I know that Artie Burns is on the board. To me, those are day 2 guys. I'm going to go to the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to go take Derrick Henry, running back from Alabama.
Ooh.
Reason being, Jonathan Stewart, we know that he's not overly reliable throughout his career due to injuries. He's also a guy entering the last few years of his contract, and he's also pushing 30 years old. I think 2016 might be his last year in Carolina. We need to get rid of some of these bloated salaries. The best way to do that, draft a replacement running back, and let's bulk up on this offense a little bit. Give Cam Newton a little bit more help wherever possible.
Yes, and that running game does wonders for Cam Newton, as we saw last year, and you can only expect Carolina to rely on that run game even more so in the years ahead. All right, my Denver Broncos are on the clock. All right, John Elway, I know teams, a lot logic suggests quarterback here, but they're not any good quarterbacks left right now, and you're a guy that doesn't necessarily reach in the first round. You've got tremendous value in the first round in the past years, obviously with Von Miller and with Bradley Roby as well. And even though I'm not the biggest Shane Ray fan, he could be a great complementary rusher to Von Miller long term as a situational Anthony Spencer type pass rusher. But with the loss of Malik Jackson in free agency, that you need more depth on that defensive line, and that is why I propose that with the 31st pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Vernon Butler, defensive end, defensive tackle from Louisiana Tech. What do you say to that, John Elway?
That makes a lot of sense to me. I really like that pick. I'm going to accept that pick. It's a difficult decision here because at the end of the first round, again, I'm going to think that this team's going to figure it out at quarterback. They're either going to acquire Colin Kaepernick, Ryan Fitzpatrick, somebody else. It's not going to be Mark Sanchez next year. I just can't imagine. However, I am tempted to go offensive line here. Ryan Kelly's still on the board. Maybe even you're starting to look at the offensive tackles like LaRaven Clark. Not a big LaRaven Clark fan myself. I think Vernon Butler is the best talent on the board, and I think that ultimately that's what your job is to do, is to take these type of players who can become great down the line. I think year one, year two, this is a guy that's going to be a rotational player with Jared Crick on passing downs and provide a nice impact for this defensive front.
I completely agree, and that does it for this specialized mock draft. Thank you once again, Ian Wharton, and let's just give our listeners a recap. By my count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20 of the 31 picks were changed by Ian Wharton, our guest general manager in residence, or our hypothetical general manager, whatever. But it just shows you that he's a guy that knows what he's talking about. He just added great intrigue to the program this morning. And Ian, I'd like to thank you very much for coming out. I definitely hope this isn't the last time we get to talk some football together. You are just an amazing football mind, and thank you for what you do for all us fans with your great work.
I appreciate that. You're too kind, and I'd be happy to join here after the draft as well to talk more football.
Absolutely, and that does it for today's edition of Sports Crunch with DKROM. And by the way, please be sure to follow Ian Wharton on Twitter at NFL Film Study, where you can read his stuff and his input on the draft all week long. And by the way, check his articles, folks. He explains those film cut-ups that he posted in his articles as good as anybody for people that don't understand the X's and O's component of football. And I just can't say enough. So at NFL Film Study, also be sure to follow me at DKROM59 on Twitter, because this show is going to continue to roll on. We're going to have multiple recap shows about the draft, and we'll preview all 32 NFL teams headed into training camp. But that does it today for Sports Crunch with DKROM. For Ian Wharton, and I'm David Cromwell. Take care, everybody, and you have a great weekend, and enjoy the draft.